The final episode of your Hyrox top tips for your exercise, and the last one we're going to be covering is your beloved wall balls. Now, the wall balls is the very last element of Hyrox. So you'll have completed 8 kilometers of running. You'll have also completed 7 different individual stations. And once you've finished all of that, your last exercise before crossing that finish line is your wall balls. Now, for women, you will be throwing a 4-kilogram ball to a 9-foot target. And for open men, you will be throwing a 6-kilogram ball to a 10-foot target. For pro women, it is a 6-kilogram ball to a 9-foot target, and for pro men is a 9-kilogram ball to a 10-foot target. And when we're talking about reps, women will throw in the open category 75 repetitions, and the open category for men and the others will throw 100 repetitions. Now, conveniently, I have volunteered as a judge at Hyrox once, and I'll be doing that again in London if you're there. And I actually got to judge the wall balls for 8 hours. Now, it sounds quite dreaded, but you see all sorts of different styles of wall balls, which I'm going to cover in this video, and things to avoid. So as volunteers, we don't no rep you. So the movement standards for a wall ball. So firstly, when you're hitting the target, it must hit your desired height, which I've discussed, and you must also finish on the desired repetitions, which I've just discussed. Other than that, you must pick up the ball. You can then hold it wherever you want to, and you must squat below parallel. So that means your hips must go below your knees. Now, luckily, if you cannot reach this, Hyrox do provide little buckets or seats for you to squat down to, so you're squatting down to a target, which we'll cover shortly. And other than that, when you've completed your reps, you're good to go. You're finished. Hyrox is done and dusted until you pay for the next one because you're addicted. So, common mistakes and things to avoid. So the first one is tilting forward when you catch the ball. Now, this is going to put a lot of pressure through your lower back, and it's also not very efficient for energy usage. When you catch the ball, we ideally want to catch it in line with the face. The lower you hold the ball down your body, the more it will tip you forward. And alongside that, the more weight you put into your tiptoes, when you are in your squat position, you'll also start to tip forward. So to avoid this, you want to hold the ball in line with the face with every repetition, no matter how you do them. And then you want to probably sit a little bit more into your heels when you're squatting down. So 1, you can get that full depth, and 2, we can distribute our body weight evenly. Now, don't get me wrong, some people's anatomy mean that they will naturally tilt forward a little bit more than others. But if we can avoid this and start doing this in training before your next Hyrox event, it's going to help you when you get to that fatiguing last station that you want to get over and done with. The next common mistake is your hand positioning. Now, when we hold the wall ball, I see all sorts, and I have when I volunteered. I've saw basketballers holding it like this and throwing it like this. I saw people holding it underneath, like so, and people holding it above. Now, when you're doing your wall balls, you want to make throwing and catching that ball as easy as possible. One, to keep the ball central, so when you throw it, we are going to pretty much hit the target every time, and it's going to rebound back into that position a lot easier. So let's just make sure that when we are holding the wall ball, we're holding it around in line with the face as just discussed, but we're holding it around the bottom part of the ball to throw it. Another big mistake is that a wall ball is actually one fluid movement. And what I mean by this is that we're not squatting, then stopping at the top of the squat and then throwing the ball. Very fatiguing on the upper body. We want to make sure that with every repetition you're squatting down to movement standards, and then as you're coming out of that squat, you're exploding and throwing that ball up to hit your target. When you catch that ball, or after every rep, whatever you do after that, it doesn't matter. But we just want to make sure that we're using whatever energy we can for our legs to throw that ball, because your arms will fatigue a lot quicker than your legs will or already have. So squat, explode yourself up out of that squat to throw at your target. Now there are a few simple mistakes which you can make with your wall balls, and it does come down to your training and how you train. If you're not practicing perfect technique, then in the event, because it's the very last thing you'll be doing, you might have been working out for an hour and 40 minutes at this point. The likelihood of your body being ready for that fatigue for you to push to a perfect standard, it's probably not going to happen. So when you're training, you want to make sure that you are trying to adhere to as good of a standard as you can. So that means every single repetition, you're sitting into your heels, you're squatting down, you're catching that ball, and you're holding it around the face. And when you come out of that rep, you're exploding up, throwing it to hit your target or above. And then whether you catch into your squat, make it smooth and fluid, or whether you just catch it and then drop into your next repetition when you feel ready, we want to make sure that we are providing that excellence in training as well as when you are into your Hyrox session, because that will make it that little bit easier on the day. Again, a way to practice this movement is to practice heavier. So if you're in the male open category, instead of using the 6, you would use 9 kilogram. If you're in the female open category, instead of using the 4, we would use a 6 kilogram. Yes, it is heavier. Yes, it is a slightly different feeling. But again, when you go to use that lighter weight on the day, it's going to feel so much easier. And I've got 2 more pieces of advice before you leave. And these are big pieces, so just make sure that you listen to these. Number 1 is your breathing. Whenever you've got that wall ball, we want to make sure that we are re-oxygenating our body. If you hold your breath, you're going to strip all of that oxygen away from the working muscles, and they're going to burn out very, very quickly. So put this in mind. You are squatting down into your wall ball. As you throw that ball up out of your squat, you're going to breathe out. You're then going to catch it and breathe in, and then you're going to drive, breathe out again, repeating this motion for every single repetition. And that brings us on to number 2. You want to make sure you have a strategy and that you stick to it when you get to the wall balls. The wall balls feel really nice for about 20 to 30 reps. And that's even if you haven't got any no reps, that's if they are all good. But unfortunately, it's a little bit of a trap. Whatever you've been doing in training, so if you've been challenging 20s or 15s, make sure you stick to that on the day. Even if you feel really, really good about things, I'd highly advise that you don't fall into this trap. I've had many clients, I've watched many people go for big numbers and then crash and burn, and it's had to be in small sets, and I've done it as well. A really good thing to do is to put them right at the end of your training sessions and focus on hitting whatever rep it is for you. So 75 for women and 100 for men, and see how many breaks it takes you and see what you can hold on to. And this will give you a really good indication of a kind of number to stick to on the day. If you do 15s for the first, 60 reps, and then you have to do 5s, then it's a clear indication that 15s from the start was probably a bit too much. Just whatever you're doing, when you're doing it, don't over rest. And as always, I hope this video was helpful. I am going to bring out a video about things to avoid for Hyrox and in Hyrox, so be sure to stick around for that because it is coming very soon. Peace out, people.